So the market had a pretty good pullback today, but my Netflix position is still up over 35%. In today's video, I want to show you guys why this is still a good trade that you could potentially get into and potentially make a lot of money in the foreseeable future. I'm also going to break down the reasons why I thought this was a good trade in the first place. And at the end of the video, I'm going to talk about where the future of the market could potentially be heading after the pullback that we saw today. So I value your time. With that being said, let's get right into it. All right, so you guys have been keeping up with the stock market or watching Netflix stocks specifically. You guys know that Netflix has not been performing too well compared to the other Mag 7 stocks or really other stocks in general in the market, right? A lot of things have been going up, but Netflix has kind of been stagnant the past couple of months. And recently we had this decent pullback that we saw from like the 1230 range to the 11. It came all the way down to like the 1130 range, right? But it was a pretty good pullback. So before I talk about why I thought this was such a good opportunity, let me explain to you guys why this pullback happened in the first place. All right, so if you've been on Twitter or you kept up with any type of news at all, you guys know that Netflix has been having a lot of pushback and there's been a lot of negative sentiment created because of that. This is primarily because of some of the shows and movies that Netflix has been showing, and people haven't been agreeing, right, with the things that they're showcasing because children do watch Netflix. So basically, Elon Musk went on a huge rant for a couple of days bashing Netflix and telling people to cancel their Netflix subscriptions. And this eventually became a popular hashtag, and a lot of people were canceling their subscriptions. Now, obviously, when you see something like this, it creates a lot of negative sentiment within the company and the stock, right? Because, subscribers are part of the revenue, and, investors may not be looking at this in a good way. So all this negative sentiment caused Netflix stock to come down a significant amount. So whether you agree or disagree with what Elon Musk is saying, I could honestly care less, right? That's completely up to you and your opinion. But as an investor and as a trader, I don't care what people think about a company. I'm worried about how that company is performing and how the fundamental financials look. So with that being said, let me show you guys two reasons why I thought this was such an obvious buying opportunity. All right, so the first reason why I thought this was such an obvious opportunity was because of how good Netflix previous earning reports was. So if we take a look, revenue was $11.08 billion, up 16% year over year. EPS was 7.19, up 47% year over year. Operating income, $3.77 billion, up 45% year over year. Operating margin, 34.1%, up from 27% year over year. On top of that, Netflix also raised their future guidance and their future outlook, right? So overall, really good news, really good fundamental financials, really good earnings report, showing that the company is confident in their business model and confident that they'll make more money in the foreseeable future. And investors want to see that. So the second reason why I thought this was such an obvious buying opportunity was because of the technical analysis. So let me show you guys what I'm talking about. So I'm primarily talking about Netflix being oversold on the RSI. So we take a look at this. Historically, anytime you have a blue chip company or a Mag 7 stock that becomes oversold on the RSI, to me, it's one of the best indicators that I've seen, right? I'm on the yearly one-day time frame. And every time this has happened, it's almost like a 99% chance that in the foreseeable future, right, maybe a couple of weeks or a couple of months, the stock will go back up. So we saw an example of that recently after all that negative sentiment pushed the stock down, right? Now Netflix climbed back up. We saw another situation here, right? Netflix climbed back up. You go back more, you saw another situation here, right? And so on and so on and so on. Every time a good company, right, great fundamental financials, Mag 7, blue chip company becomes oversold on the RSI, you almost guaranteed after a couple of weeks or a couple of months for the stock to go back up. So it's a really good trading signal to look at. So that was another reason why I thought this was such a great buying opportunity. So when I saw this, right, I'm going to be honest with y'all, Netflix options are pretty expensive, right, because Netflix is a pretty expensive stock. So, for example, I like to buy long-dated options to give myself time for things to play out. But we look at options expiring August 21st, 2026, right? They're going to cost you almost $18,000, over $18,000, $19,000, right, depending on what strike price that you get. So that's pretty expensive for my portfolio and my taste. So what I did was buy NFLU, which is basically a 2x leverage on Netflix. So I found a position that had a good amount of open interest so that I can easily get inside the trade and outside the trade. It's costing me about $1,000 to buy this contract, and it expires March 2026, right? So it gives me a lot of time for things to play out, and so far it's been going pretty well. So the reason why I think this is such a good opportunity still is because Netflix has earnings coming up this month, and if Netflix does have a good earnings report, right, raises guidance. Overall, just good news, right? This is going to raise the stock up significantly since it's still down from its previous all-time high. So whenever you have a situation where you have a really good company with good fundamental financials and the stock is coming down because of some other reason, whenever that other reason passes by, stocks typically tend to find their way back up to the true evaluation, which is what I was also betting on. I was betting on that eventually this will pass by, Netflix still has good fundamental financials, and the stock will eventually rise back up. But at the end of the day, I can't predict the future. This is me simply analyzing the stock and making a bet because of that. So make sure you do your own due diligence and make sure that makes sense to you, and make sure you put in money that you're willing to lose, because nobody truly knows what tomorrow holds. All right, so if you guys are watching the market right now, it looks really bad, right? So Trump just imposed 100% tariffs on China, and we're back again with the same bullshit, right, that we saw back in April. So my biggest advice to y'all is nobody knows when this is going to end, when the bottom is going to be, right? Nobody can predict that. Simply just dollar cost average and good companies with good fundamental financials. Find good companies that had previously good earnings support, right? That raised their guidance, right? Overall healthy companies, and just dollar cost average, right? Buy the stock, right? If you want to buy options, right? Buy long dated options. Give yourself a lot of time for this to play out, right? Like in 2027 or 2028, if that's available. Give yourself a lot of time, because nobody knows how long this Trump tariff situation, trade war, whatever is going on, right? We don't know how long that's going to last. Could be a week, could be a month, could be a year, right? But a lot of times when things like that pass by and you have good companies with good fundamental financials that are undervalued, they will find their way back up. Just like what we saw after the tariff situation in April, companies eventually find their way back up. So dollar cost average and just be patient. Hopefully y'all learned something new. Let me know what stocks you're looking forward to getting into. I'll see you guys in the next video.